A king stands atop white marble, surrounded not by servants or nobles, but demons, winged, shrieking, grotesque things, not attacking, but obeying, and in his hand the ring that commands them. This is no fantasy. This is Solomon, king of Israel, master of spirits, and builder of God's temple, using creatures from hell. Before we dive into one of the strangest stories ever tied to the ancient world, consider liking and subscribing for more hidden histories like this one, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Solomon's reign is often remembered for a single, defining moment, a dream at Gibeon where he stood before God and was offered anything his heart desired. Instead of riches, victory, or a long life, Solomon asked for wisdom, a heart able to distinguish good from evil so he could serve his people justly. This request, rooted in humility, set him apart from other rulers of his time. The biblical account describes how God granted his wish, bestowing on him an understanding so profound that it would become legendary across the ancient world. Yet, Solomon's wisdom was never limited to human affairs. Tradition holds that his understanding extended into the unseen, giving him knowledge of spiritual forces at work in the world. This unique gift, described as Elohim divine wisdom, set the stage for stories that would grow even stranger over time. Centuries after his reign, a text called the Testament of Solomon would reimagine his legacy entirely. The Testament was written several hundred years after Solomon lived, so its tales are legend rather than biblical fact. But in its pages, the king's wisdom transforms into something much more mysterious, the power to command demons. The Testament opens with a young laborer plagued by the demon Ornias. Each night, the spirit sucks his vitality and wages. Desperate and exhausted, the worker turned to King Solomon for help, setting in motion a chain of events that would change everything about how the temple was built. Solomon sought guidance and received a powerful tool from the archangel Michael, a ring inscribed with the divine seal. With this ring, Solomon confronted Ornias and forced the demon to submit. The ring didn't just grant control, it compelled the demon to reveal his true name, his powers, and the secret to binding him. This was the first step in Solomon's systematic approach to mastering the spirit world, a process that would soon expand far beyond a single tormentor. Once Solomon realized the potential of the ring, he established a methodical system. He summoned each spirit, demanded its name, and interrogated it about its abilities and weaknesses. This wasn't about cruelty or spectacle. Solomon used the information to assign each demon a task that matched its supernatural strengths. Ornias, for example, was put to work hewing stones, his unnatural power turning boulders into building blocks. Another demon, Beelzebul, was ordered to saw marble, ensuring the temple stones were cut to perfection. The cast of spirits Solomon commanded was as strange as it was varied. The Testament of Solomon describes a demon who appeared as a beautiful woman with a donkey's hoof, and another who was headless, with a flame burning where a neck should be. The completed temple stood as a marvel of its age, its walls housing the Ark of the Covenant and serving as the heart of Israel's religious life. However, this moment, when Solomon finished the temple with the help of the unseen, marked a turning point. It was here that he moved from humble servant of God to master of secrets, crossing into territory where wisdom and ambition began to blur. The triumph of the temple was not just an achievement of architecture or faith, but a sign that Solomon had discovered and used knowledge that was both powerful and perilous. The Testament of Solomon describes how the king's focus drifted from holy works to more self-serving aims. He began summoning spirits to reveal the locations of hidden gold, treasures buried deep within the earth, and secrets about the stars. Solomon even instructed his servant to trick the demon Epithetes into disclosing where gold was concealed, showing how his methods became more manipulative as his obsession deepened. The ring, once a symbol of divine authority, became a tool for extracting forbidden knowledge and wealth. The king, who once sought wisdom to guide his people, now used his gifts for personal gain, pressing the spirits not for insight into justice, but for secrets that fed his growing greed. The more Solomon learned, the more he wanted. His alliances with the demons, once strictly controlled, grew into shadowy partnerships that served his own ambitions. Each new secret pulled him further from the humility that had once defined him. Yet it wasn't only greed that drove Solomon from grace. The Testament of Solomon introduces a figure whose influence would prove even more destructive, a Jebusite maiden, renowned for her beauty and allure. She did not worship Yahweh, but served Moloch, a Canaanite deity associated with some of the darkest rituals of the ancient world. Her presence in Solomon's life represented more than a romantic entanglement. She embodied a direct challenge to his faith and the covenant that had once set him apart. The pull of the Jebusite maiden was powerful, and Solomon, for all his wisdom, found himself ensnared. It wasn't just her beauty that captivated him, but the allure of something forbidden, an invitation to cross a line he had always respected. The priests of Moloch, seeing the king's infatuation, issued a demand. "If thou lovest this maiden, go in and worship our gods, the great god Raphael and the god called Moloch." For the sake of her affection, Solomon agreed. He bowed before idols and offered sacrifices in their names, turning away from the faith that had defined his reign. This act of idolatry was more than a personal failing. Moloch, infamous for the horror of child sacrifice, stood in direct opposition to everything the temple represented. For the king, who had once built Israel's holiest place to now kneel before such a god, was a devastating reversal. The Testament of Solomon captures this moment with stark honesty. In Solomon's own words from the text, "And this I actually did, and at once the Spirit of God departed from me." The loss was immediate and absolute. The divine presence that had granted him wisdom, authority, and power over the spirit world vanished. Without it, Solomon's gifts faded. His ability to command demons disappeared. His words, once filled with insight, became weak and foolish. The consequences were swift. Solomon, stripped of his divine favor, found himself vulnerable, no longer the master of spirits, but a man enslaved by the very sins he had once condemned. He was compelled to build temples for idols, dedicating his labor to gods he did not believe in. The king, who had commanded legions, now answered to foreign priests, his authority hollowed out by the choices he had made. The irony is unmistakable. The master of demons, undone by his own desires, now obeyed the demands of the powers he once subdued. This collapse wasn't just personal tragedy, it was the unraveling of a legend. Solomon's journey follows the shape of an inverted hero's path, a rise to greatness, followed by a fall brought on by his own unchecked ambition. The very gifts that made him extraordinary became the seeds of his undoing. Even the wisest among us can fall,